and welcome to another episode of the Overcrank. We've got another special guest this week. Holden's joining me as always. I keep dragging him into everything. And then we've got Dan, and I'm not Dan Virchow, Dan.
Yeah, Virchow.
Virchow,
yes.
And I brought Dan on because he just posted a wicked cool video where he put the Luna, what I would say, through real paces in a real world environment, and just wanted to talk about it. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really cool that you reached out because the YouTube community, it seems so huge, and then you find out that it's actually this big. So it's cool to collaborate and talk about this with other people who are genuinely just really interested in this camera, because I just am. It's kind of a sick fascination at this point, and I'm glad that there are other people out there that are feeling the same way.
This camera is so well. Colton knows I was bated breath for this camera. Like, it is, I think, just groundbreaking. Like, this is, in my mind, sort of the future of where prosumer cameras are probably going. I just saw an interesting thing that I'm doing another video on here come up this week. I don't know if you watched this one by Tony Northrup, but this blew my mind that DJI, this is partly why I think they're being so crazy, in Japan owns 73% of the video camera market. Now, let that sink in. Just with their little camera, they own 73%, meaning Canon and Fuji and Panasonic. Everybody else is fighting for 30%. And these funky little cameras are now dominant in Asia. So it's a very interesting time that we have. So using this camera, I want to kind of go through each of the scenes, and I hope you don't mind. I want to put up some of the footage from your thing. I'm going to share while we're talking about it.
Sure.
You said you shot all the concert footage at 120p.
Yeah, and that was a big swing. I mean, I didn't even start shooting anything else. I didn't start with 24 or 60. I was like, let's just see what this thing can do. And I really wasn't expecting much, because 4K 120 on a device of this size, you're kind of like, I'm going to take what I can get. Right. And when I got back and started looking at the footage, I was really just like, wow, this is all super usable. And when I slowed it down, to like 20% in a 24 frames per second timeline, the slow motion was so crisp and looked so good. And I instantly, after that first night I used it, I was like, oh, this is not leaving my concert kit at this point. Like, it was a done deal. It was so simple. And, the other footage, that I shot, just like living my life, I shot everything at, 24. And I just can't say enough good stuff about the crispness of this video. And you see a lot of people comment about this online. They're like, these videos on the internet don't even do it justice, because when you're watching the playback on your own computer, it is so sharp and it looks so good. And I completely agree. You barely have to touch any settings. Like in a lot of the DJI cameras, they have the option of like denoise or sharpen and stuff, and you want to like lessen those. This one is pretty much right where you want it, right out of the box. And you mentioned how these cameras are like dominating the market in Japan. It makes perfect sense. They're so easy to use, and they give you everything you need. You talked about the Tony Northrup video. He made a lot of really great points about how these offer just so many things that are far more expensive mirrorless cameras like my Sony bodies just don't have, like internal storage. That has become such a huge thing on cameras like these, that I just, like, anytime I see a new camera announced, that's like one of the things I'm looking for now, or that never used to be a consideration. I was like, well, I'm going to get a card. That's just the way it works. Now you don't need to do that with these. They're so easy to use. And another thing you was talking about was like a mic system. The mic systems on the DJIs and on these Insta360s, they're so seamless. They're so easy to connect to. It's crazy that more expensive models don't have like a proprietary microphone that is that simple for the average person to use.
100%. I guess we got a little bit of a head too. I guess we should step back for a second. What is it you do?
Okay.
Yeah. We kind of jumped the gun. I got too excited about the camera. What is it you do? Because I'm looking at the pictures behind you. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I've been doing concert and video photos and videos for about 10 years now, and I've been kind of in the touring world for several years as well, which is a whole beast amongst itself. So I've had a lot of great opportunities to test cameras like this in a unique environment, and I generally tour in the world of heavy metal. I've toured with Slipknot, which was kind of the main band I was touring with for a few years, and now they're on a bit of a hiatus. working on some new music, and I've been with this band Motionless in White, who's just blowing up right now. And they have such a high production show that is such a great opportunity to use cameras like this and see what they can do. And also just for my own, I'm a professional, but I'm also a major enthusiast. I love camera tech. It's just one of the only things that fascinates me in life. Like when new technology comes out, it's like, how does this revolve around the world of cameras? So I'm sure you guys are pretty similar in that respect. But yeah, in short, that's what I do. I tour around with bands and do photography and videography.
Dan, what's your go-to before this Luna came out? Like, what was your like the main camera in the kit that you would reach for all the time?
So I'm always packing two cameras on me as I'm out in like a photo pit or wherever I'm at, and that's the Sony A7R5 and the yeah, and the A7 IV, the new version of that. But I also keep the Sony ZV-E1. I call that the Rocket because it's so useful for like one thing to me, and that is the dual base ISO of 12,800. I always keep that in my bag, and I also have the A7C2. So I take way too much gear, but when it comes to video during a show, it typically I will use the A7 V or the ZV-E1 and the R5 if I'm in a pinch, because that shoots great video too. It's just not my main go-to.
Yeah, the R is always for the photos, right? Like, but did you see like
Yeah.
were you as amped as we were with the R6 announcement? Like obviously it's not probably not quite enough to get you to buy the new body, but like that fully stacked and you have like a crazy fast readout speed for an R camera. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was working this big festival in Florida down in Daytona called Welcome to Rockville. And, I was amongst other, camera geeks like me. And I was finally, after all these years, ready to tell them, like, I think that I am fine with my kit right now. Like, I have no desire to update everything or anything. I think that I can do everything that I need to do. And immediately after that, they announced the R6. And I looked at it and I was like, all right, this is the camera gods tempting me again because I like to have the latest and greatest. I know people like to say that gear doesn't matter, but when you get the newest, best gear, usually it simplifies your life for a number of reasons. That's something people don't take into account. So I've always been willing to pay the price to have the latest and greatest. And this is the first time in a long time where I saw that camera and there were certain temptations. But overall, I was like, this won't be solving any issues that I have right now because I don't think I have any issues. So I was finally able to say no to that one. But it is always tempting to see what they're going to put out. But now, after we were talking about, some of the discussions with Tony Northrup and the whole like, wow, these little cameras are almost offering more than the more expensive bodies. I think now my expectations when new like Sony bodies come out are going to be a lot higher. And it's
Mm.
going to take something special for me to feel like I need to upgrade because as an R5 user from a photographic standpoint, there's nothing that camera can't do for photos that I would be getting in any other body in my use case. And it's important to always point that out. People were actually commenting on my video about certain things of like, well, you didn't really mention this or you didn't say that. And I was like, well, I definitely made a point to say my use case, like short burst shooting, like I'm using this camera for. I don't need extended battery. I don't need a ton of memory. But it depends on your use case, and it's going to take a lot to make me want to get out of what I have now.
Well, there's two camps. Unfortunately, we're upsetting a lot of the DJI fanboys right now by pumping up the Luna. So you're going to get a bunch of haters on all the little finite points. But to your other point, we're getting lost in the weeds. What's my use case? And that's where I'm at. Like this is perfect for my use case. I will add a caveat to what you said before. Like the newest greatest gear, I think it gets pushed on only because a lot of people think if I get that gear, I'll be a better filmmaker. That's not how that works. It does, but to your point is excellent. There are improvements and it will make my life easier or it's a little bit better, especially in a professional application. Just don't expect the new camera to make you better at your job.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Um, and I wanted to just kind of go back too because I'm fascinated because like when I first got into video production here in Northeast Ohio, people were like, man, is there even enough work for you to be able to do that? And I'm like, you don't understand. Like video is way more than just movies and TV. Like people weren't in that mindset yet. And I'm fascinated that you've carved out a niche where you're just a video guy for concerts. Like you just travel. Are you like contracted by a band and you just on the bus and tour with them, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I actually have a full-time job too.
Oh, okay.
Um, my life is chaos and there's not much sleep involved these days. For my full-time job, I do this kind of work. I'm the multimedia director at a company, and it has a
Okay.
series of restaurants. So a lot of my work is with food.
Okay.
And there's also some entertainment venues. Like I work for a big music venue in Sturgis during the motorcycle rally. So that's like my main dish, but I work remotely and I'm able to do that from the road. So everything that I do with the bands is basically freelance work. But these trips can range from like there might just be like what I just did in Australia. That was a 10-day, 3-show tour. Pretty pretty quick, just kind of came and went. But there's times when a tour might be 6 weeks long, and that gets to be a lot, when you're dealing with your job at home, you're dealing with whatever's going on here. And I do think a good thing about having that variety of work is that let me put it this way. It just makes you a well-rounded person. There was
Yeah.
I have a photo here somewhere, but Slipknot is a very successful metal band. I mean, they played in massive crowds, sold out arenas around the world. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to work with them. And there was one of their last shows was at the O2 Arena in London, and they decided to do a group photo with the crowd because it was the last show of this particular tour, kind of an end of that era. And so we did a shot with the band with the crowd, and epic. Next time I turned on my camera was to take a photo of a plate of vegetables. So it shows you the highs and lows of the photographic world. But yeah, I do this as a kind of a part-time freelance work.
Very cool. That's extremely cool. Okay, back to nerding out on the camera. So as you said, you're right out of the box with the Luna shooting the 120. Did you shoot it in log or
Everything in iLog. Yep.
okay? And see, that's one of the things that the Muse and the other can't do is shoot that slow-mo in log. Just saying.
What do they cap it? I have not heard that yet. Do they cap it at like 60?
Yeah, I think it's 60p. Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to shoot the high frame rate, you have to go back to this normal color profile. And there are times, like even on the Luna, I just did a little test in my studio. I don't love the normal color profile under my studio lighting, like maybe outdoors or whatever. But I was like, oh, that is ugly. So the iLog is phenomenal. So
Yeah, your test, Todd, your
yeah,
test you put out today was great. That blew my mind when you put them next to each other.
yeah,
That normal color profile like blew
fell
out
apart.
those oranges. Like it was like way oversaturated. It was crazy. Yeah, the iLog seems to do a lot better job.
Way better. If you watch it too, on my bald head, you'll see like artifacting like happening. And I'm like, how is that? It's the most well lit thing in the room is my bald dome. And for some reason, it was like freaking out as I was moving my head around. I was like, that is weird. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to learn about these cameras.
Well, yeah, and having used the 360 cameras from Insta360, which
yeah.
have never really had, they had like a neutral color profile or flat or whatever they call it. And that's like supposed to be logish, but it's not. And I've always found that their normal color was a little just strange. I don't know how else to put it. I don't love it. And that was one of the advantages I thought DJI always had over them. But now with this iLog, I love it. I mean, and like I said in the video I put up talking about this camera, it seems to edit so similar to S-Log 3. And it fits like right into my video workflow. So iLog, I can't say a bad thing about it.
Yeah. The only thing I found interesting is you do have to make sure you expose correctly for it. I underexposed dramatically on the other video, as you saw, Colton, and it was like, this is a muddy, muddy mess. And it was almost impossible to recover it. It's sort of the opposite. And you're probably familiar with this, Dan. When I do client work, I tend to want to underexpose everything so that I don't blow my highlights and I can always bring it up. The Luna is sort of the opposite. You kind of want to overexpose because it likes highlights. It hates shadows. So it was an interesting thing, but you were shooting right out of the box. So it was auto color, auto shutter speed, The only thing you were changing was the frame rate and the iLog.
No, well, yeah, it was an auto color because it was an iLog, but yeah, that was it. It was, and that's the thing. Like, we could go back and forth about ND filters with cameras like this. That's a whole discussion of your use case. But when you're in like a pretty dark environment, like a concert, and you're just going to be running something with the intention of probably slowing it down, it just really doesn't matter. So I had no problems putting it in like 4K 120, and like, not to beat a dead horse, it looked so good. I didn't expect that mode to look that good. I really didn't. I thought that like 60 will probably look awesome. I'm pushing it too far with 120, but no, it just works.
It looks awesome in the footage, and I was fascinated. I was like, so you had somewhere it was sped up to real time, and it didn't look video-y, and that I think I would attribute that to the iLog, uh, but like it didn't have that crispy, weird video look, even though it was 120 in a 24 frame timeline. But then when you slow it down, especially for a show like that, it looks so wicked cool. Like the sparks and the fire. I was like, this is wild footage.
Yeah, and even, having a lot of the pyro and stuff, the highlights didn't look like destroyed at all. Like
Yeah.
everything just looked like it really worked. So I don't know what kind of magic they're putting into this. But for a version 1 of this concept, I just don't really know how they could have made it better. I mean, yeah, there's little things, and I'm sure there's things that they will upgrade, via firmware, because they're all Insta360 is pretty good about their firmware. I mean, there's times I'll turn on my X5, the 360 camera, and I'm like, oh, this is like a new camera now. They added a
Yeah.
whole bunch of features since I last turned this on. So I have very high hopes of the things that they're going to add to this camera.
I just one of my commenters today just told me something that I'm excited about. They're slowly rolling it out, like it's not a mass rollout. I think it's by serial number or something. But now you're going to have a Rec 709 overlay on the log, so you'll be able to expose properly. I haven't got that. I'm like, give me that, because that would be
Yeah.
very helpful. There's a number of things, and I guess they smoothed out the rocker wheel or the rocker too. So when you zoom, it's a lot more like a dad cam. Sorry, guys. I know you love when I call it that. Than that jerky motion. But I love their responsiveness.
A Rec 709 overlay seemed to be the most weak spot on currently, because I know even you watching your videos, Todd, is like you kind of like have to guess, expose it, take it back in and edit it, and then see kind of where the log footage lives.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm not shooting, not that I'm saying I'm doing anything better than you. I'm not shooting it in just the normal. I'm trying to use the cinematic formulas for my shutter speed and everything, and just ran into some weird issues with it. So having that overlay will be money. I'm looking forward to using that.
Yeah, I got a question for you in terms of the exposure. Have you heard and read about this base ISO of 800 on this camera? What are your thoughts on that? Because
Oh,
I've been hearing people that have tested it that have said like they have found that is when they get the most dynamic range, is when they keep it at that. And so when I shot my talking head piece of that video with the Luna Ultra, I had a 150th shutter speed. I had everything as you would say, with the 180 rule. And
yeah.
I put it at ISO 800, and it actually was a little overexposed for my shot, and I was able to pull it down pretty good. So I don't know if that's legit. I was just trying it out. But yeah, maybe that's something to add to your testing to see if there's any legitimacy to that.
Totally will. Golden?
I was going to say, I know I've been searching specifically, literally last night. I was like, oh, I want to do some camera tests, Todd, mostly because you've been like itching that with all of your camera tests on this Luna, and trying to figure out, because you do, as you shift ISOs, you get different, like every camera has slightly different dynamic ranges for each ISO set. It either shifts more to the highs or it shifts more to the lows. And so I was like trying to find, mine were the Luna, the iPhone 17 Pro Max, because I've shot a couple of things with that, and then the Extra Muse or the DJI. None of those three have listed base ISOs because, I mean, I'm sure we're all kind of familiar with like most cinema cameras, the FX3, the A7, like what your base ISOs are. when you're shooting. These were like, I couldn't find any information, but I would be super interested to test where you get the best dynamic range out of that and what you can save.
Yeah, it's weird too. I'd like to what Dan was saying. There's some weird magic going on in these cameras because when I was trying to get Mike and Dan, you should look at the video I posted today, and I'll put some in this video. I cranked this up to 2000 ISO for this setting in here, and I was like, "Oh, that actually looks pretty good." And there was no noise
Yeah.
introduced, and I was like, "I don't know where the cap is. Like, I want to test that. Like, how far can I push the ISO before it starts introducing noise?" Because I was like, "This is a clean image," and I wasn't expecting that. So I don't know
Yeah.
where that number
And,
is.
maybe these are the things that we should actually start expecting out of cameras like this, because I think we've just been so ingrained in the mindset of using action cameras or pocket cameras the past few years that like anything over like even 1,000 just starts
Yeah,
to fall apart and look terrible. And that's actually why I wasn't using the DJI Pocket 3 a lot on the road for concert footage, because I just didn't think it looked very good.
yeah,
And this is just an entirely different level. So maybe they've just elevated the game. Maybe that tech is just there now.
yeah.
Dan, when
I
you
ran.
were,
Go ahead, Colton.
I was just interested when you were shooting uh, at the concerts, were you locking in a white balance or were you letting it just kind of auto range? Because that was the one weakness where I would see on all my Insta360s cameras is if you get that color off, even with 10-bit, like the white balance, if you get that off, it starts to look kind of green or funky.
I had auto white balance on all of the concert footage, but I will say when I shot the talking head bit for the YouTube video, I still had it in auto white balance, and I wish I wouldn't have. I didn't really love
Oh,
uh the color I was getting with my light, and I should have matched up the temperatures, which I didn't, because I was just like, oh, this thing rocks. I'm not even gonna think about it. And I would like to play around with it a little bit more in that regard, because it didn't color grade with the light as smooth as it was just raw, and no studio lighting. But yeah, everything concert wise, that was all auto white balance.
I'm gonna I'm gonna say two things. One is like I found the same problem with the Pocket 3 because I do a lot of work with. It's the other end of the spectrum here with a ballet company here in Cleveland,
Okay.
and the lighting at the theater, like everybody's faces just got a little bit muddy and a little bit plasticky with the Pocket 3, and I was like, oh, it's disappointing. I think I was too far away. Maybe if it was closer, it wouldn't be so bad. I haven't played with that, but I think from now on, I'm going to be taking the Luna for the ballet shots at the theater because I can use the 60 millimeter lens and money. Um, oh, I forgot what my other thing was going to be about that. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Since you mentioned you do also like product photography and stuff like this, and Colton's going to laugh at me, I'm going to tell you another thing you might love to add to the kit for your day job, and that is this iFootage Shark Pico slider. I just started playing with that thing, and you can mount that thing, and it's a motorized, and you put your little Luna on that, and you can do product shots like repeatable, easy, panning around the product. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, I couldn't
Yeah,
get
with
enough
the
of it.
tracking. No,
Yeah,
that's a great idea. And
yeah,
and I that has crossed my mind to get that. And one of the things, there's actually a shot in the video. I was at the Sydney Opera House, and I just tracked the building and had it in 120 again. And I just did that walk so you could get that, classic, like I'm going to speed this up with some motion blur and zoom in. And on a regular camera, even with a gimbal, like, if you have a nice Ronin setup, that can be such a tricky shot to get it right, to keep that thing directly in the middle, unless you have one of the new tracking modules on,
yeah,
the 4 mini or the 5. But with this, it was so easy. And with product stuff like that, that's brilliant to have that on a slider and to track it. I mean, now this is just doing it itself at that point. All I'm doing
yeah.
is hitting that red button. So that's a great idea. Send me a link to that. I want to
I
check that
will.
out.
And the other cool feature with the Luna, with the 60 millimeter, you can get to up to 15 centimeters. So you can get really nice macro photography. And then you mix
That'd
that
be
with that
great.
motion, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah. I don't have the wide angle lens for this yet, since I just got the standard combo. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
will knock Insta360 on one thing about this. It seemed that a lot of their accessories that were made for this camera just weren't available
Tell me about
at the launch.
that.
Todd said the same thing.
That has been that's been part of. I'm waiting for the extended battery grip still. And the lenses just came in. I find it interesting. I think it's back to everything we've been talking about on this channel, in that there was this race to the finish line between them and DJI, and their camera was more further along, but they're like they're the what do you want to call it? The line of products. They weren't off the production line yet, and we're like, we got to get this camera out. We'll figure that out later. And I feel like that's what's happened here. I wish all those accessories were available.
If it makes you guys feel any better, I was just reading yesterday like a Reddit thread of people still waiting to get their ND filters for the GoPro Mission 1. So they're still back ordered on those. So like, at least you guys, like, this camera came out a solid 40 days after the Mission 1 shipped, and they're still waiting on ND filters. So
well, I mean, if you're still in the GoPro ecosystem, you're just kind of back ordered on life, I think. So they shouldn't expect much.
Oh man, he's just fanning the flames over here on my channel. I love it.
Yeah. You know, there was a lot of stuff I wanted to get for this before my trip to Australia. I was like, well, I want to pick up some NDs for some of the outdoor footage and everything. And, you know, either they weren't available, or some of the products, like I live in Las Vegas, where if I order something on Amazon, it can be here in like 2 hours. I mean, it is like instantaneous. So I've become accustomed to that. And one of the things I was looking at, I can't remember, but it was on the Insta360 website, and it said usually ships to Nevada within 21 days. I'm like, where is this coming from? The moon?
China.
Like, so that was a little bit disappointing. But now, you know, things are becoming more accessible. But if they did rush this out to undercut DJI's launch, which they, in my opinion, had every right to, because DJI was just like wagging this thing in front of people forever.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, I was going to say, they still are. There's no camera out yet, other than for like the pre-testers.
Asia. Yeah.
It seems to be out overseas, but like I had no intention of getting this at all. Like it wasn't on my like list of things I needed. But when I saw the removable screen, I was like, oh, I'm totally getting that. No questions asked. And as soon as I was able to see that the DJI model didn't have that, I was like, I guess we're making a switch in this level. So here we are.
I'll give you one little. I have a review coming. I haven't had a chance to experiment with it. Our weather's been wonky in Ohio lately. The Tellison set of filters is quite interesting if you're looking for the ND, because you get a kit of ND, CPL, and Black Mist, and it was like $45. What I really liked about it versus the Osmo, so you know the Osmo, you throw on a filter and it's like, I can't get that off of there. This one has, it's probably because of the way it's made. It's that nice big wide lens thing. There's like a fingernail ridge on it, on the metal frame. And it's like, oh, that pops right off. It's no longer smearing my thumb all over the lens.
When I first saw this lens design, when I had it in my hand, I was like, I hope that somebody makes a ridge so that this is just easy to pull off. Because it can be so finicky with the DJI cameras, especially their Pocket series. Now, I haven't used the new one yet, but in the past, those filters were hard to keep track of. They were hard to get off. It was just became such a nuisance that I had actually made videos about, like, you know what? Don't even bother with ND filters for this. Pick it up, shoot, it looks fine. I mean, for most use cases, this is all you're using this for anyways, to capture a quick shot. But now when we're getting like up into like these cameras are not exactly so pocketable anymore. They're actually getting a little bit bigger, but they're getting the power to match that. To me, it's just more practical to use it in a pro setup than it was some of the older generation cameras.
Oh, 100%, especially with this 10-bit log footage that you can mix into the stuff you're shooting for your customers anyway. It becomes part of the overall deliverable, and no one knows what was shot on what. They look so good now.
Yeah. I'm actually flying to North Dakota tomorrow to do a big project for a crop seed company, you know, a big farming area up in the Midwest. And I'm taking this and I'm going to set it up in many different scenarios and absolutely use it on a commercial shoot. I mean, I'm using my Sony cameras as the other setup, and you just That's why I put that clip in the video I made of like, if I didn't tell you what clips were shot with which camera, you would not know.
Yeah.
Like they just look that good. And actually during the tour, I was making like a little 9x16 story every day, and it would be like 3 clips, and they were all shot by that Luna camera, and I'd say like shot by Luna Ultra, and people were like, "What even is this?" And a lot of my peers that also do this, that do like touring photography and stuff, were all messaging me after they looked up what that camera was. I'm like, "Are you serious? Like that thing is getting that?" Like it is. This is a pro level camera. If you know how to use it, which is not hard, um, then you will absolutely get great results with this. And that's another thing, just to go back to the whole like what I expect out of cameras in the future. Cameras like this are so incredibly simple to use. I could hand this to anyone, and within 5 minutes, they would have a good grasp on how to use it. Whereas if you hand any other mirrorless camera to somebody, people don't even know what the shutter button is anymore. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't register. The world has moved on from like that idea for the casual person to even use a shutter button. So this is the future and this is the way, and it can absolutely be incorporated into a pro workflow.
Well, I want to dig into what you just said in terms of being easier, because this is something that literally this weekend I was like wishing that I was like cursing at Nikon a little bit for how difficult their system is. Because I have the FX3, and I just got a couple of weeks ago the ZR, the Nikon ZR, just because I love the red color science and I found it super cheap and I wanted to play with it. It's great. It's a super fun camera to shoot, but Nikon's whole ecosystem to try and get anything from your camera into your phone is like miserably difficult. And Sony works kind of, but there's like 10 steps to connect your phone, and then you have to like go through everything, and some of the like depending on what you videos you shoot, you can't even get them onto your phone. Like DJI and Insta360 have built this to where, like you said, like you literally could just pull those from the Insta360 and post them to a story, and you didn't have to go through the whole process of like getting your card reader out, importing it into your computer, getting everything. Like, were you able to do that Insta360 to phone, like straight up? Or did you take it to an editor?
I took it to an editor beforehand, but to piggyback off what you're saying, the DJI app and the Insta360 app are both awesome. I'm a big fan of the Insta360 app because it is so easy to connect. It just connects. And there's so many times when I'm trying to get a group photo of like if it's me and my family and I'm trying to use one of my Sony cameras, they are so finicky with their connections. Even now, even on the new models with the A7 IV, that camera just came out and the apps are so wonky. And I just think like I spent thousands of dollars on this. How is it that in 2026, there's still issues with connecting or keeping a connection where those smaller cameras, they just work? I mean, there's nothing else you can say about it. They just work, and I have no problem using them for a lot of stuff. And I have edited a lot within the Insta360 app, whether it be through the 360 camera, the X5, or even pulling photos and stuff from this one. It's so easy to get your files off.
Well, and like you just said too, and here's another plug for that screen, like before this camera, the expectation, even if you had a GoPro or a DJI or whatever, is like you get the phone out, you connect to the phone, you set it up on a tripod. If you want to take like a group picture, then you run back in place and then you kind of like hold it on your phone, right? Like now you just detach that screen. It's like such a brilliant move by Insta360, because then you don't have that connection issue of trying to pair it with your phone and then it loses connection. It's just like seamless. I did have a question for both of you guys, I guess. Inside the Insta360 app now that you guys use for the Luna, can you apply LUTs or like a color correction into that log footage? So you could, like, if you wanted to keep everything from the Luna to the phone to post, can you go color correct iLog through the app? Or is it a little funky? Is it still getting there?
I believe you can. I haven't played with it because I'm like Dan. I just pull everything to the computer. I haven't done that.
I believe there's filters that you can apply that
There's
do look
filters.
pretty good on the log footage.
Yeah.
I think I tried that at one point, but yeah, I've become so accustomed to just putting things on my computer. I love
Yeah,
their
there's like a
app for
bunch of
editing.
filters and
Yeah.
stuff that are built
Yeah.
in.
I love using their app for editing 360 footage much more than I like using their studio um, desktop
100%.
app. Yeah, it's just the gyro and everything is a total different ball game. But for a camera like this, I'm probably still, unless it's photos that I'm going to be pulling off and editing through there, I'm going to do all my editing. I use Final Cut Pro, so I'll just pull it and put it on there.
This is the perfect trifecta, Todd. We have
Yeah.
one Final Cut Pro and one DaVinci Resolve and one Premiere. So we are
Yes,
a well-rounded team right here.
covering it.
Yeah.
I would say I'm probably dating my camera. The app that for my Sony camera, I was irritated the other day because I was shooting some stuff and every once in a while I'm like, oh, I like that shot. Like I want to put that up on Instagram. And they have like this memories app or whatever, so you can try to connect it. It allowed me to transfer one photo and they said, oh, you have to get a subscription. I'm like, I have to pay to transfer my photos to the app? Like that again, DJI, there it is. It's just on. I was just like, how is this a thing? And I love Sony. It's like, you're charging me for my own content?
Yeah, I love Sony too, but some of these other camera manufacturers are really testing my loyalty lately. Primarily Panasonic, Lumix, like their cameras are so feature packed. It's crazy. And had I not been so invested in Sony glass, I would consider that change. But I also shot with Canon for 10 years before I switched to Sony, and it was kind of interesting to me. Selling all that gear was super easy. People wanted the Canon stuff. And so I was able to easily buy into the Sony system. But now there's just so many things about them that they just seem to be lagging behind. It seemed like they got so far ahead of everyone that they like decided, in the 2020s, we're just going to kind of coast. We're just going to kind of
Yeah.
roll with what we've been going with because people are invested in this system and it's a pain to get out of it. But there are some things now, like even just video playback on a Sony camera is such a nuisance that you can't just like tap and scroll through it. Like, what are we doing? And that's another thing about these cameras that is so enticing. And I really do believe that in the next 5 years that pocket-sized cameras like this are really going to affect the market of mirrorless cameras because these take great photos too.
Yeah.
The raw photos are great, and it is super easy using that remote to get selfies now, as opposed to the clunky apps that you go through with these other camera manufacturers. With this, I can frame it, be like feet away from the camera. I've done it with my girlfriend many times. So this is the way. I do think that this is going to really disrupt the market here in the next few years.
Well, and to that end, there's something that I'm very excited about. And I don't know if you did, I did research right away when I saw Tony or somebody mention it. Canon has a patent for one of these now too.
Really?
Canon and the renders are like, oh, this could be a very exciting camera, especially with the Canon color science and their history and lenses. There's a lot of old tech that they could bring to the table in something like this. So I agree with you. I think the form factor is definitely the future. I'm just curious how many other sort of legacy brands are going to jump on board, either get on board or probably fade away. Kind of like the point and shoots did for a while, and the camcorders, like no one even buys those anymore. And so
Well,
I feel like this is the future. I did have one more question for you before we sign off, and because I found it interesting. Um, you said you were able to run everything off of just the internal memory, which is only 47 gigs, which I found limiting. I guess it just makes me paranoid. So you do a whole night at 120 frames doing all that stuff. Like, how much did you churn up on your camera? How much did you use up?
not as much as you would think. I don't have an
Hmm.
exact number for you, but I know that I was never even close. And
Hmm.
I mentioned in the video how I was never really shooting for longer than 2 minutes at a time.
Okay.
But I mean, 120 frames per second at 4K for 2 minutes, that's a pretty sizable file.
Yeah.
But I never had a concern. Every time I would pull the files off, I was like, oh, I still had a lot of wiggle room here. I could have done some more.
Hmm.
So I do recommend for almost everyone to put a micro SD card in
Yeah.
this kind of camera, but um, I do think that it's important to identify what you will be using this for. And sometimes that takes years of experience. And it's taken me a long time to finally dial in, like, I don't need that because that's not solving any problems for me. I need this, even though I don't want it. I need that. It can take a while, but as a good rule of thumb, I would get an SD card for this. And I'll say that DJI they were the pioneers of that, you know, throwing in all this internal storage. And I think the 4 Pro, what does that have? Like over 100 gigabytes?
I think
I
it's
mean,
108. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
great.
That's
That's a big sell for that camera. But I personally didn't have any problems, and I mentioned at the end of the video that I shot that entire talking head piece, 4K, 24 frames per second. Um, it was a 15-minute long video, and it used 9 gigabytes of internal storage, so it wasn't even really cracking
yeah.
what's in there. So for me personally, I'm cool with that, but I would recommend everybody else get some storage.
Yeah.
Did you touch the 8K very much, or were you mostly living in that 4K world between 24 and 120?
I really can't think of a scenario where I ever will use 8K. It's crazy that all these years later, I still think 8K is just a gimmick. Like,
I'm with you.
yeah, it's got its use cases, but like when I was still shooting with Canon and the R5 came out, that was the big selling point of that camera. And so this was like 2020, 6 years ago. And you get it, and you're like, this is unusable. My computer can't even handle this file size at the time. And, if you run some tests, I saw some tests, I didn't do any myself, but the 8K footage is like not that, you zoom in and it didn't seem to be that much of a quality improvement over the 4K. Not going to use that. It's the same with the Sony A7R5 that shoots 8K. Never think about using it on that. The file sizes and just the whole, like, I don't need that. 4K is plenty. But for people that don't know they don't need that, it's a very enticing selling point.
Yeah.
It's something that they can tell their friends, this shoots 8K video, and they'll be like, what does that mean, John? It just it's a flex, essentially.
Yeah. And I found it interesting too, because I give this lady a shout out all the time, but I love Tamara Gabriel's videos, and she showed both, and there was a vast color difference. I thought, you're like, oh, why is the color science different between 4K and 8K too? She didn't change locations. She didn't do anything. She's like, this is what 8K looks like. And you're like, oh, I don't know that I even liked it. So
You thought it looked worse, Todd?
I liked the 4K better. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know why. I thought the skin tones on her in particular just looked better. She looked a little more yellowish, I think, when I can't know how to describe it. It was just like everything changed a little bit. Maybe she didn't change. Maybe she needed to change exposures and stuff like that to match her. I don't know if that's the case. I was just like, oh, I liked before she changed it over to 8K. I liked it better.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm the resolution person that would say, like, I was disappointed all these FX5 rumors have kind of locked in that they're staying at 5K. I think 6K is a nice sweet spot for like the next 5 or so years. 8K is probably a little too much, but I'd just be interested, because usually when you can pull that stuff down, I mean, I'm just thinking of like, the Pixis 12K. When you pull that stuff down onto a 4K timeline, it just looks so much better. But I don't know, when you've got a 1-inch sensor, like, I don't know how much is really, making a difference, but it's interesting.
yeah.
I've got a question for both of you, and I know this is probably difficult, but I would be interested, since both of you guys have been big fans of this camera. I know it just came out, and I know, Dan, I like your mantra of like, don't get a camera unless you have a use case for it. What do you see as like the V2? What would make this camera even better? One feature that they could add that would make a V2 even better.
Well, for me, that 12x zoom is lossless. If that 240 millimeter lens really looked the same, that would be awesome. And that would be the use case, I think, for a proper 8K sensor. Like we go to 12K lossless or 12x lossless. That would be awesome for me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of I think the zoom is something that pops into my mind too. When you are zooming and you can just tell when that lens shift happens, it doesn't look great. And that was actually a big deterrent for me wanting to use the zoom at all. But outside of that, I would just say more internal storage. Like, I'm fine with the amount as we've discussed, but I do think if you just have an all-in-one package, like everything you need is here when you get it, that is It's a game changer for so many people. Um, but it's so like having a microphone in the detachable screen, that was the most brilliant thing. And
Yeah.
that was a huge selling point for me because we're living in this age now where everyone is just doing that weird, like holding their
Yeah.
little mic like this, which was hard for a lot of us more traditionalists to accept for a long time. But if you're going to do it, like at least this has a form factor that somewhat kind of looks like a little bit of a mini mic or something, and it's just practical. So I thought that was a stroke of genius. I do want to ask you guys a couple questions
Yeah.
before we wrap this, and one is about the zoom. I have no affinity for the zoom on this at all. I mentioned in my video that I used it like for a shot across the street. Like that was really handy. So I'm glad it's there. But if zoom wasn't a part of this camera and it costs like $100 less or something like that, I think that I would still go with this just because of the detachable screen. And I
Mm.
really like the Insta360 app. There was just some reasons like that. If this didn't have a zoom, would that affect your guys' view of it in a very negative way?
So if it was only like a 20 millimeter lens, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I wouldn't have been as stoked. I probably would have stayed with the DJI ecosystem. Um, because for me, like I told you, like when I do client work, I hate using my big gimbal. And I was hoping to find something that would replace my gimbal. And so I don't like zooming, like dad camming it. I like to fix the focal length and just use it. So I want to be able to use that, particularly like in settings with the ballet and be not right up in the dancers' faces while they're moving, but have close up shots, and so that is a use case that was very important to me. I was like that because it's, especially for me that like they let me get right up there with them on stage. I don't want to trip anybody or get kicked by anybody. So I like to be back enough that I'm like, oh, here they go. They're moving there. And so the zoom was very critical to me.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is, and I'm sure you guys have heard this, like they were supposed to launch the Luna Pro, which is, Dan, exactly what you're saying, just a single
Yeah.
lens. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, that was like their whole launch. We haven't heard anything about it. I know this camera's gotten a lot of press and a lot of compliments and a lot of criticism. I'm wondering if the lawsuit might have
Oh,
slowed because that's what DJI was suing Insta360 for. I think most of those patents were all about the single lens version of this Insta360. So I just think it's
hmm.
interesting that they had that version. We haven't heard anything about the Luna Pro yet. So that would be interesting. I would be interested too, Dan, because you said that the shift was noticeable. And I think we talked, Todd, to Sophie, who had the extra Muse, in terms of the difference. So they made two very different choices with their lenses
Hmm.
between Insta360 and DJI or Extra. One thing that's interesting is the Luna has a wider aperture on your normal lens, which has the 1-inch sensor, and then
Hmm.
it has a more closed aperture. It's like a 1 point or a 2.0, I think. It's like a
Yeah.
1.8 and then a
2.0.
2.0 on the smaller sensor. So you have a smaller sensor, which is already going to do worse than the 1-inch sensor, and you have a lens that lets in less light. It's flipped on the DJIs where the smaller sensor has the 1.8 aperture
Hmm.
lens. I'm interested if that makes it more congruent through your zoom. That's a
Potentially.
smarter idea to me, is that like give your zoom lens a a wider aperture. If I had a 1.8 on a 60 millimeter, you're going to get a little bit more separation, a little more bochet. Like that actually makes more sense than what Luna did, which was flip it and give you a 1.8 on the wider lens. So that would be I think DJI and Extra still win the design on that one. Like that makes more sense. On a V2, I would love a 1.8 or even like a 1.4 on their 60 or 80 millimeter, like whatever the next version of this is. That might make the zoom. And then obviously if you could match the two chips, the two sensors, to give you a fluid, that would make it more expensive. It wouldn't be cheaper, it'd be more expensive. But like we were talking about that with the DJI it's totally different cameras between the, you know, the zoom sensor and the 24 millimeter, 20 millimeter. So if you had the same sensor all the way through, I don't know, that would be my hope for a second version of it. And then Todd, you know, my gripe for V2, just get the camera to turn vertically so I could just turn the camera.
I will, yeah, I will say
Yeah.
one caveat to that. I will say, you know what I'd actually like to see? We're so close. Why can't we just get a single zoom lens and then have a really good sensor? Have a 2.0 that goes from 20 to 60 and then there's no shift. It
Yeah.
just pushes through. Like we got to be close. Like-
Well, I think that the problem with a lot of what we're hoping for with the lower apertures is that these cameras will go from this to more like this. You know, they'll be like the
Yep.
size of your arm.
Yeah,
And
probably true.
we're probably headed in that direction anyway, where there will be like
Yeah.
the Luna Ultra Pro Max or something where it's like this is an all-in-one, kind of like the 4D that DJI has.
Oh yeah.
Just more in this size, which would be cool. I mean, because this is so easy to use, and it definitely beats a big gimbal setup and everything. We'll get there, but yeah, it would be to get like the blurred out background of having a lower aperture like that, you know, 1.8 on a telly. That would look great. There's a lot of potential with that. I just don't think that they could use the word pocket anymore for a lot of these, which we've already kind of graduated out of anyway.
Yeah, go
Fair
from
enough.
pocket to cargo short.
Yeah.
You need
Get
a
the
lot
jorts.
more. Yeah, you need a lot more
Yeah.
space.
And so you guys have used the extra Muse, the new one?
We haven't, but we had a guest on last week with Sophie on last week who has had it. She had hands on with it.
Okay, because
she had-
you know, now that I've gone this direction with Insta360 and you know haven't really even thought about the Pocket 4 Pro because of the availability issues in the US at this point. I was just wondering like what people who have used both. I haven't really watched any YouTube videos because it seems like all the embargoes aren't lifted yet. Like we're not getting true comparison videos yet. So I was just wondering people who have firsthand experience with that, what the major pro of the DJI would be during this generation outside of already being bought into their ecosystem with their microphones and such. Because to me, if I was just going to recommend something, I'm going to recommend this, not just because I have it, but because that removable screen is such a game changer with the mic in it and everything. I love their app, and you know the Shot Lab. Some of the Shot Lab features of Insta360 are available for this camera, which you know like tell you how to get really cool shots, and then the app will edit it for you. And for the common person, how couldn't you love that? So I was just wondering if you guys have any insight on this versus that.
her experience was she really loved it. She had a very good positive experience of it. She did find the same thing I find, that screen that flips to one side or the other is bizarre and added no feature to her whatsoever. Plus she's like me, like I prefer symmetry. Like this is bothering me that it's hanging off the side. But overall, she had a very positive experience with it. She didn't, and that's why I always try to remind people on this channel, like I don't try to dump on them. I just think they botched the job on the launch.
Big
But
time.
I think the color science is the one thing that DJI really kind of wins on. They really do a very nice job with their color, and if that truly has 17 stops of dynamic range and that single lens, I mean that's a powerful cinematic tool. That I would like to play with. That's been the only thing to me that I'm like, oof. I do have my $20 down payment on it still. I haven't asked for the refund yet, but I'm getting closer because I'm kind of in your camp now, Dan. Like this camera has done so much for me that I'm just like, I don't know that I care what the other one's doing. I'm ready for the next generation and see where we land
Yeah.
a couple years from now.
And that's a good feeling to, you know,
Yeah.
not want something else, because as a gearhead, we always are thinking like, well, what about that? Like, I'm perfectly
Yeah.
happy with this, but what about that? And you end up spending a lot of money, you waste a lot of time. And I've done that with a lot of systems. I got into Fujifilm cameras for a minute, and then it was like, I prefer full frame. You know, you just dabble in different systems. So I'm glad to hear that you're happy with this, and I am too. I am excited what they'll do with in the future, but I'm also not really looking that far ahead because I'm still so excited about how many things that I'm going to be able to do with this. And the 17 stops of dynamic range on the DJI does sound awesome, but I feel like from a color perspective, there's nothing I'm not getting out of this that I want after that one tour that
Yeah.
I did. So I'm very happy with this. I think it's cool that they got in the market. I think it's hilarious how you can just straight up steal somebody else's design at this point in time. Like, I get the lawsuit, but I also hear people say that they secretly think these two companies work together and that this is all a facade. I have no idea. Um, but I will say one thing about the launch you talked about. DJI is so random about their launches that it's infuriating. And like we will see leaks for months in advance. I remember when the Action 5 Pro was going to come out, and we're all like, what does Pro mean in this capacity? And you would see leaks, and you'd have like a timeline of when we thought it was going to come out, but it just doesn't come out. I don't know why it's so hard for camera companies to like say like this is going to come out fall of whatever year, instead of just like dangling this carrot in front of you. They would sell so many more products if they told people when they are available, instead of one day it's just available and you totally forgot about it. It gives you something to be excited about when you have an actual date in mind. Like movies have a release date, music albums have a release date, everything in the world does. Why is it the cameras are like, we're announcing this today and it's available today? Like, what are you doing? Just give us some space, some flexibility here. And honestly, had the 4 Pro come out in any semblance of a normal release schedule, and I know it's difficult because we're in the States, but they're available if you like, your camera stores might sell them locally. Mine does here in Vegas. They sell DJI products when they're brand new. There's ways to get them, and I probably would have considered it, but there was no consideration because it just wasn't available and I didn't know when it was going to be. So here we are, and now we're all Insta360 guys. Crazy how life works.
Well, and I've just sort of as a sign off, I'm over being brand loyal. Give me the right camera. And it matters, like you said, in the camera body systems where you have all the lenses and stuff. But when it comes to this stuff, whoever gives me the best product, I don't care. I'm not, I'll wear both of your t-shirts. Send them on over. I don't care. I just want to make good content.
Yeah. When DJI got into the 360 game, I looked at that versus, where Insta360 was at. And I'm like, oh, I'm usually DJI, but I'm still with Insta360 on this. And now with this, I'm open to whatever. Like you said, you make a good product, I'm here for it. If it's going to help my career and my path, then I will go with the right tool for the job. But it all comes down to, I think the key phrase of this discussion is use case. That's what everyone needs to decipher before they buy any camera is, what am I going to use this for? Not what do I think I'm going to use this for? I've done that in the past before too, where I'm like, I'm going to get this kind of camera and it's going to be my new behind the scenes camera. I'm going to make so much content with it. And then I just don't. So knowing exactly what you need, and sometimes you have to spend some money to get there and make some mistakes. You have to identify that and decide which one of these cameras is for you. But with the detachable screen, I just don't know how you could go with this one. Unless you really don't want to buy a new mic. If you don't want to buy an Insta360 little mic Pro or whatever, which are not expensive, that's the only reason I can think that you wouldn't switch at this point.
But even Todd tested, you could plug in the receiver to your DJI mics or your Hollylands and the USB-C port works. So if you really don't want to spend the extra money, like you could plug your old receiver in too.
Yeah. Well, in that case, absolutely switch to Insta360 for this generation, at least.
For this generation. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. This has been real fun. Pleasure to meet you and hear all about your experiences, both professionally and what you're doing with the camera. Thanks as always, Colton, for joining me, and appreciate you all coming along for the ride, and we'll see you soon.